Coming up, a county supervisor gets ousted from office. Then, Iowa House Representatives campaign together at a Cyhawk tailgate.
Details emerge following a school shooting.
All that and a profile on an Iowa House Representative. Important dates this week in history, along with making sure your facts are straight.
Also a preview of the upcoming debate, the latest from polls, and something for you to consider.
Good evening and welcome to The Update, your home for news and politics.
From the local level to nationwide, we're keeping you up to date. I'm Jordan Tovar.
And I'm Johnny Valtman. And Jordan, wouldn't you know it, we're about 8 weeks out from the election. A lot of stuff's going to be picking up, but before we go anywhere, we're going to keep it local here in Iowa City. Jordan, I'm handing it off to you.
Well, Johnny, like they say, it all starts at the local level. And there's been a shakeup in the Johnson County Board of Supervisors recently. The board voted to fire its executive director, Guillermo Morales, last week after a few board members accused him of being, quote, harsh and disrespectful. Morales has only been in office for a little over a year and a half at the time of his firing. Supervisors Rod Sullivan, Lisa Green Douglas, and Royce Ann Porter all voted to fire Morales, with V. Fixmer Arias and John Green being against the decision. With the debate tonight, groups are coming together to watch the debate. On the campus of the University of Iowa, the School of Journalism is hosting a watch party in room 105 tonight with snacks and drinks provided starting at 8. The Young Americans for Freedom at Iowa will be hosting theirs at the Airliner beginning at 7:30. They will be offering free pizza and debate bingo. The Johnson County Democrats are hosting theirs tonight at Big Grove Brewery in Iowa City at 8 p.m. And it's been an absolute blazer of a start to the school year for local politics. And Johnny, there's always a lot going on around the state.
Yes, Jordan, and it starts at the local level and then it just bleeds out to essentially the entire country. And with it being so busy, we're going to be sending it out to Kayla Smith, who's making her update debut, keeping us posted on what's going on around the state of Iowa.
Thanks, guys. The Libertarian Party has filed an appeal to the Iowa Supreme Court. This comes after Polk County Judge Michael Hoopert upheld the ruling from the state objections panel that stated the Libertarian Party failed to follow state law during the nomination process by choosing their candidates on the same day the convention delegates were selected. This appeal pushes the deadline for local election officials to begin printing ballots to Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Marionette Miller Meeks held her annual Triple M tailgate in Coralville on Saturday. This event was used as an opportunity to encourage voters to vote red across the board in the upcoming election. All 4 Iowa House Representatives attended and put their support behind Miller Meeks.
Everybody in Congress goes to her, and that's healthcare. She's a doc. She knows what's going on.
So we cannot afford to cede this district. We need to send Marionette's common sense leadership back. And again, our Iowa delegation, Randy, Zach, Marionette, and I, we punch above our weight for you in Washington, D.C.
So I'm asking you, in these 2 important races, Iowa 1st and Iowa 3rd, we need your help. So this game day, let's go out and have a victory for all of Iowa.
We want to be that inspiration and continue to be that shining city on the hill for all of the world. Thank you.
The tailgate was interrupted by pro-Palestine protesters inside and outside who called for a ceasefire. We'll be keeping up to date with the Libertarians' ballot struggles, but for now, I'll toss it back to you guys.
Certainly a busy weekend around the state, and Johnny, it's certainly heating up around the country too.
Yes, Jordan, and with all the stuff going on, especially with the election on top of it, it can seem like a busy time. So that's why we're going to send it to the newsroom where DITV's Jayce Bertrand is going to give us an update on everything going on around the country.
Thanks, Johnny. And following my coverage from last week, multiple charges have been filed in a school shooting in Georgia. On Friday, 14-year-old Colt Gray was charged with 4 counts of felony murder. However, additional charges are expected to be included in regards to 9 victims who survived the shooting. Gray was initially informed that he may face the death penalty, but this was later corrected to life in prison with no chance of parole. This is because of a 2005 Supreme Court ruling that prohibits death penalties for felons charged while they were minors. Following the suspect's hearing, his father, Colin Gray, was charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. His charges stem from allegations that he bought the AR-15 his son used in the shooting, as well as helping cover up threats the then 13-year-old made to his school online. Meanwhile, details are emerging that the suspected shooter's mother warned Appalachian High School counselors the morning of the shooting after receiving alarming texts from her son. And this comes as a manhunt is underway for a man involved in a mass shooting in Kentucky. Police allege Joseph Couch opened fire on drivers from the I-75 in the town of London, seriously wounding 5. Couch is currently on the run and is being described by police as armed and dangerous. And this is still a developing story, so I'm going to continue to follow for details, but for now I'm going to send it back to Johnny and Jordan in the studio.
And Jayce, thank you for giving us that national update. But now we're going to bring it back here to the good old state of Iowa, where you have a candidate profile for us today, Johnny.
You're right, Jordan. And with 8 updates left until the election, we're going to be giving some profiles on the Iowa State Representatives vying for the 4 districts in November and their opponents. And starting it here in Johnson County, we already saw her earlier. Republican Representative Marionette Miller-Meeks currently serves in Iowa's 1st District in Washington, D.C. Miller-Meeks was born in Iowa and enlisted in the Army at 18, where she would serve for 24 years as a private, nurse, and doctor. Following her service, she operated her own ophthalmology practice, became the first woman faculty member of the University of Iowa's Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences. Her political career began in 2008, running for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. Johnson County used to be in District 2 when Iowa had 5 representatives in the House. Miller-Meeks ran back-to-back in both 08 and 10 as the Republican choice, but lost both elections to Democrat Dave Loebsack. Governor Terry Branstad would then appoint her to the Director of Iowa Public Health in 2010, where she would hold that position until 2014. She then faced Loebsack again in 2014, where she was still unable to beat him, losing a 3rd straight election. Miller-Meeks would then run for the Iowa State Senate, winning the primary and a spot in Des Moines in 2018. Representative Dave Loebsack then retired in 2020, opening the door for Miller-Meeks to run again. Facing new Democrat Rita Hart, Miller-Meeks edged out a win by a mere 6 votes to punch her ticket to Washington. Now looking on her stances on recent issues, Miller-Meeks is for a border wall on the U.S.'s southern border. She wants to combat inflation with fiscal responsibility instead of government spending. She is pro-life and supports Israel and Ukraine in their wars. Now, Jordan Marionette Miller-Meeks, when she runs in November, she's going up against Christina Bohannon, the Democrats' choice. This is the 3rd time they will have met in the last 6 years, and both of them from the University of Iowa. It should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, Johnny, we've got a Hawkeye showdown, and Johnny, the 3rd time might just be the charm for either of them.
We'll have to see, Jordan. But there will be another more anticipated matchup, as the President of the United States will also be voted on in November. But tonight there is a presidential debate, so we're going to be sending it back over to Kayla, and she'll tell us more about the presidential debate.
Thanks, guys. The long-awaited debate between presidential nominees Kamala Harris and Donald Trump comes to a head tonight. It will be hosted by ABC and will take place in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. Like the summer's debate between Trump and President Joe Biden, there will be no live audience. The 2 campaigns have been hashing out rules for the debate and have finally agreed on some key points. The microphones will be muted for the candidate not speaking, a rule that was requested by Trump's team and opposed by Harris's. Questions will only be asked by the moderator. There will be no opening statements, but a 2-minute closing statement. Each nominee is allotted 2 minutes for each question, 2 minutes for rebuttal, and an extra minute for clarification and other comments. There have been no debate topics released, but it is expected to cover big-ticket items, from abortion to the war in Gaza. This is one of only 2 debates scheduled for this election, with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz planning to face off on October 1st. Both nominees understand how vital this debate is to their odds in November, so they are repping up their preparations for the debate. Kamala Harris has been taking a traditional approach by focusing on rehearsals. Harris has been working with Philippe Reines, who has been acting as Donald Trump in mock debates. Reines previously worked as an aide to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and helped her prepare for her 2016 debate against Trump. On the other hand, Donald Trump has been putting his focus on interviews and press conferences. Trump has been meeting with his advisors to go over expected topics, but the Trump campaign believes that Trump will know what to do when he enters the stage. The debate will air at 8 p.m. Central Time tonight on ABC. Now, this debate could have major effects on the polls, so now I'll pass it over to Hannah, who has a look at what the polls are looking like before the debate.
Thanks, Kayla. The presidential nominees are polling neck and neck, but that could change after today. For the first time, Trump and Harris will debate as their party's nominees. The latest polling from the New York Times shows Trump leading 48% and Harris right behind at 47%. The nominees have been going back and forth with no clear lead. Trump was leading after the last debate and before Biden's exit, and Harris gained excitement and energy starting off her campaign. She was pulling slightly above him, but is now cooling off. And swing states are echoing the national trend. 7 key battleground states make or break this election: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. In Wisconsin, Harris is leading 50% and 3 points above Trump. And Michigan, Harris has a 49% lead, just 2 points above Trump. Harris also has a 1-point lead in Pennsylvania, 49%, and Trump, 48%. And in Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona, the nominees are tied at 48%. Just 56 days away from the election, and either one could win. The nominees have discussed their positions on key issues independently, but now they debate these topics in front of the country. A new poll from Pew Research Center ranked the top issues for voters: the economy, healthcare, Supreme Court appointments, immigration, and abortion are the key points for Americans. Foreign policy, gun policy, and climate change are also concerns for voters. We'll keep tracking polling after the debate and the coming weeks. Back to you, Jordan and Johnny.
Now, Johnny, I used to be a huge history buff in high school, but lately I've been feeling like I need to brush up on my history.
Well, don't worry, Jordan, I got you covered. On September 11th, 2001, 19 men boarded 4 planes, hijacked them, and crashed them into 4 locations in the United States. The Twin Towers in New York were first, New York City. The Twin Towers in New York City were hit first, followed by the Pentagon at 9:59 a.m. The South Tower collapsed in New York City, and then 5 hours away, just a minute or two later, the 4th and final plane crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers tried to regain control of the plane. Just a half hour later, the North Tower collapsed. World Trade Center 7 collapsed at 5:30 p.m. later in the day, despite not being hit by a plane. The aftermath shook America as 2,997 people died in the attacks, and it took months to clean up the collapsed towers in New York City. To improve national security, the Patriot Act was passed out of fear that an attack at this scale could happen again. Islamic militant group Al-Qaeda took responsibility for the attacks. The United States swiftly went into action, as less than a year later they would start the war in Iraq, fearing Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. No weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq, and America would remain in the country until 2011. It would also be in 2011 when the United States found and eliminated Al-Qaeda's leader Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. On September 12, 1990, East and West Germany signed a treaty that would reunify the country. Following the country's defeat in World War II, Germany was split into 4, with Allied countries occupying the zones during the rebuilding years. Tensions rose between 1948 and 1949 as the Berlin blockade cut off supplies from Western Germany by Eastern Germany. A split then came on in 1949 when West Germany would be a democratic nation while East Germany would be a communist nation. The two countries were a hotly contested ground during the Cold War, as the Berlin Wall was built in 1961 to split the two countries. For almost 3 decades, the wall stood and the two countries coexisted with an on and off talk about reunification. In 1989, the fall of both communism and the Berlin Wall began, knocking over the vital dominoes that led to the reunification in 1990. On September 14, 1901, the 25th President of the United States, William McKinley, died from his wounds in an assassination attempt days prior. On September 6, McKinley was in Buffalo, New York, talking to the crowd at the Temple of Music during the Pan American Exposition. Leon Czolgosz, an anarchist, went to meet McKinley, who went to shake Czolgosz's hand when he pulled a pistol and shot. One bullet grazed McKinley, but the other one entered his abdomen. Doctors and surgeons attempted to locate the bullet, but it was never found. McKinley returned home and showed signs of recovery until September 13th when he collapsed, and he would later die at 2:15 a.m. on September 14th. Czolgosz was charged and convicted for the assassination, leading to his execution on October 29th. Theodore Roosevelt took over the job of the United States president and is now regarded as one of the best U.S. presidents in history. McKinley is one of 4 presidents to be assassinated in office and was the 3rd to be assassinated in a 36-year span dating back to Abraham Lincoln.
And Johnny, after that, I'm certainly feeling a lot more caught up on history, and that was just a lot of factual information thrown at me. And speaking of factual information, we're going to send it back out to the newsroom now, where Jayce is going to talk about some stories online that aren't entirely true for fact check.
Thanks, Jordan. And staying on topic with the Georgia school shooting, I want to call out some flat-out irresponsible journalism I've seen following the story. As details emerged about the suspect and the victims, several high-profile accounts and even some news stations reported on the shooting with the picture on screen attached, insinuating that the young man seen in the photo was the shooter. In reality, this was 14-year-old Mason Schermerhorn, a victim of the shooting, who was reported to be neurodivergent. And just to let passions run high real quick, Mason is remembered by his friends and family as a kind, creative, and loving child, not a product of neglect and abuse that murdered 4 people and injured 9 more. For this boy to be remembered as such for even a second is a horrible and sick breach of journalistic integrity. I don't have to bring up the abysmal optics of framing an innocent young black man as a murderer while regarding the alleged shooter as, quote, troubled. I don't have much more to say today besides this. If you're a journalist or you're claiming to be one online, the first step towards really telling the story and telling news factually is to do a simple Google search and find those facts. That's all I have today, but now I'm going to send it back to the studio where we're going to go over something we want you to consider.
Thanks, Jayce and Jordan. That's just awful to hear about that. Hopefully journalism can, kind of get back on track, as we've seen, in recent years, it kind of going on a slow decline.
Yeah, Johnny, I mean, something's got to change. We got to just keep checking the facts.
Yes, and that's why we'll have Jayce. But this week, you have for your consideration. And Jordan, I wish I had some popcorn right now. I'm excited to hear what you have for us to consider.
A hotly contested issue that I'm sure you've heard about in the news lately is that of book bans. Now, this isn't just a red or blue issue, as almost every state in the U.S. have banned certain books in some way or another. Here in Iowa, however, the state has banned over 100 books since 2021, and that's on the lower end of the country too, as states like Florida have banned over 5,000 in the same time frame. While it's disheartening to see so many books banned, the real issue is banning what's inside the books. 43% of books banned dealt with stories about characters across the LGBTQ+ spectrum. Another 36% of banned titles include themes of race, according to the Washington Post. Now, of course, I could throw stats at you all day about the issues with book bans, but when you try to erase stories of LGBTQ and people of color, I could almost liken it to a child hiding from a monster under their bed. A non-issue that, if you get to know them, you'll find that they're actually pretty great people usually. Love thy neighbor, as they say. The world is not, has never been, and will never be a totally white and straight one, and by trying to erase groups other than that, you're not only doing a disservice to yourself, but your community.
Thank you, Jordan. And man, this show, just a lot of stuff packed into it. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. And thank you for tuning in tonight to The Update, where you find all your news and politics.
Tune in next week for more updates from the local level to the nationwide level.
From The Update, I'm Johnny Valtman.
And I'm Jordan Tovar. Have a wonderful night.